At his wife's sister's wedding, they gave him a name tag that read Housekeeper, no seat, no meal, no dignity. After 12 years of sacrifice, he quietly took off his ring and walked out. But what came next wasn't anger. It was silence. And that silence would tear their world apart. My name tag said Housekeeper. I stared at it for a full 10 seconds before my brain accepted that it wasn't a joke. Not a clever prank. Not a mistake. The glossy white rectangle dangled from a cheap plastic lanyard with bold block letters that couldn't have been clearer. No title. No seat assignment. No table number. Just that one word. Housekeeper. I looked around, scanning the hall to see if anyone else had been humiliated. But no, everyone else had proper name cards with titles, tags with gold trim. The servers were better dressed than I was. Crystal glasses sparkled under chandeliers, and soft classical music filtered through the flower-strewn air. Then I saw her, Sana, my wife. She was standing across the hall, laughing with her cousins near the open bar. Her dress was shimmering, hand-stitched, imported. I recognized it because I'd paid for it without question, like I had with everything else for her family over the past 12 years. Her laughter rang like silver bells, effortless and careless. She turned, noticed me standing by the entrance holding the name tag. She offered a half wave, the kind you give to a neighbor you'd rather not talk to. Then she leaned over and whispered something to her cousin. Their eyes flicked toward me. I didn't need to hear what was said. Their smirks told me enough. I pinned the name tag on my chest. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I thought if I played along, someone would step in and say, "All right, joke's over." But no one did. Instead, Sana turned away. My mother-in-law walked past next, her perfume hitting me before she did. She glanced at my tag and said with a casual smile, "Well, that's fitting. You've always been good at chores." She didn't stop. She didn't whisper. She just kept walking, as if what she said were the most natural thing in the world. I looked for my seat. There wasn't one, not with the other guests at least. There was a single metal foldable chair near the kitchen doors, tucked behind the catering table. No tablecloth, no cutlery, no nameplate, no plate, no glass, just that chair. And me. I sat. Anyway, I'd been doing that for years, sitting quietly where I wasn't welcome. I sat and watched as Sana stood beneath a canopy of white roses, taking selfies with the bride, her younger sister, Mahak, and the bridesmaids. They looked like they belonged in a magazine spread. And there I was, the man who had taken loans in his name to help make this wedding happen, treated like an invisible extra in a movie he'd bankrolled. When Mahak's engagement had been announced 6 months ago, Sana had cried tears of joy. I remember her hugging me tight, telling me this wedding had to be perfect, that it was the last major event before they could all finally relax. I'd smiled and nodded. I'd even handed over the last installment from my savings to pay the decorator. When her father passed 3 years ago, I'd taken over every responsibility without a word. The house repairs, the groceries, the medical bills. I hadn't been asked, I'd offered. Like a son. Like family. That role expired today. Around the second course, I noticed the servers skipping over me. They'd been instructed not to serve the housekeeper, I suppose. Even the caterers had been briefed. I looked down at the floor and tried to convince myself that maybe I was imagining it all. Maybe I was being sensitive. Then I heard Sana's voice. "He doesn't need food. He's used to waiting," she said, with a laugh that chilled my bones. It came from only a few feet away. My eyes snapped up. She was speaking to an aunt I hadn't met before, who laughed with her in response. No one looked at me. I wasn't even a person in their world anymore. Something in my chest cracked. I reached for my left hand. The ring had been on that finger for 12 years. A plain gold band we'd chosen together from a small store in Sada, back when we were broke and idealistic and full of dreams. It had meant something once. I couldn't remember what it felt like anymore. I twisted it, pulled it free, and held it between my fingers for a moment. I stood up. I walked over to the nearest table, one of the nicer ones with imported roses, and an overflowing charcuterie board, and placed the ring down carefully in front of a crystal vase. No words. No scene. I walked out of the hall without turning back. The first few steps were the hardest. My legs didn't feel like mine. Then I heard someone calling my name. Sana. This time, her voice was shrill, panicked, almost desperate. It was different from the laughter. She didn't catch up. Maybe she didn't try. Maybe she just wanted to be seen trying, but I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I walked into the parking lot and got in the car she believed was hers. It wasn't. I'd paid for it in full 3 months ago, transferred the papers into my name, and never told her. She hadn't thought to ask. The next morning, the calls started. First hers, then her mother's, then Mahak's fiancé, whom I'd helped land a job through an old connection. They all said the same things in different ways. It was a joke. It went too far. You're being too sensitive. Come home. Let's talk. I didn't reply. I didn't block them either. I just let their words pile up like unread mail. I moved out of the apartment we shared and rented a modest flat near my office. Nothing fancy. 1 bedroom. A window that let in morning light. A kitchen I could use without being criticized. I transferred my money into a new account. Closed the old joint one. I didn't leave a note. I'd never had silence before. Not like this, and it was beautiful. But I didn't disappear completely. Over the years, I'd done a lot for that family. More than they remembered. I'd been listed on property documents, registered businesses in my name to help them avoid taxes, helped with loan approvals using my credit history because theirs was trash. I'd done it for love, for trust, for belief in a shared future. Now I was done. One by one, I began removing myself. I visited the offices, corrected documents, pulled out of shared accounts, called in old debts. Every piece of myself that I had poured into that family, I started pulling back, quietly, legally, with precision. No shouting, no revenge monologues, just a correction. Then the cracks began to show. I didn't have to look for it. People told me, friends, neighbors, even former co-workers. The tax notices came. The business bank account was frozen for discrepancies. The family house, the one I'd helped renovate, was now under dispute because of a document I'd never signed. The wedding caterers filed a lawsuit for bounced payments. The photographer refused to release the wedding album without final payment, which Sana could no longer access. They scrambled. I stayed silent. One evening, about 3 months after I'd walked out, I heard a knock on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, Sana was standing there. She looked different, paler, thinner, no makeup. Her eyes were ringed with dark circles. Her mouth trembled slightly before she spoke. Can we talk? I didn't answer. She looked down at her feet. I made mistakes, she said. I let them control how I treated you. I was scared. I thought you'd never leave, no matter what. I watched her for a moment. She stepped forward. I miss you, Rayyan. I miss what we had. Please, just talk to me. I said nothing. She waited, eyes wide, pleading. I closed the door, not hard, not with anger, just gently. Finally, because silence sometimes is the only language people understand, and I wasn't her housekeeper. Not anymore. 3 weeks passed after I closed the door in her face. She didn't return. She didn't call again either. For the first time in 12 years, my days followed a rhythm that belonged only to me. I woke up early, made my breakfast, brewed chai the way I liked it, strong, simple, no cardamom. I walked to work. No one criticized how I dressed. No one asked why I was late or why I wasn't smiling. I answered only to myself. At the office, my co-workers noticed I was sharper, quieter, yes, but focused. They thought I was just finally putting myself first. They had no idea what I'd come out of. Most people didn't. Most people don't see quiet men as survivors. But I was .by mid-month. The last of my name was erased from the family's tangled documents. The final withdrawal was from a trust I'd helped set up for Sana's mother after her husband's death. I'd been listed as a CO signer for emergency access. I transferred that right to her sister instead. Legally correct. Emotionally final. I never wanted to hurt them. But it was never about hurting. It was about removing myself from a place I never belonged. One afternoon, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it ring out. Then it came again. This time I picked up. Mr. Malik? Yes. This is Inspector Dorwood from the civil branch. You're listed as a former guarantor in a property dispute. We'd like you to confirm a few items. I paused. I knew the case. The ancestral home now caught in a spiral of missing signatures, unpaid taxes, and disputed inheritance. I confirmed my withdrawal. He thanked me. Before hanging up, he added, "They're in trouble, sir. That family's a mess now." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Later that week, I ran into Rafiq, Mahak's fiancé, the one whose first job I'd helped secure. He looked uncomfortable spotting me outside the grocery store. Rayyan bye, he said. It's been a while. I nodded. How's work? He scratched the back of his neck. I left that job. The new manager, well, it didn't work out. He hesitated before adding, they're blaming you, you know. Sana and her mum. They say you sabotaged everything. I smiled. A small one. He looked startled by it. I didn't sabotage anything, I said. I just stopped fixing things. That night, I sat at my small kitchen table and opened my laptop. I stared at the blank screen for a long time. Then I started typing. A letter, not to them, but to myself. I wrote everything I remembered. Every insult, every moment, I swallowed for the sake of peace. I wrote the name tag story in full. Then, I saved it, printed it, folded it, and put it in the drawer of my bedside table. It wasn't revenge. It was a memory. It was healing. A few days later, I received an email. The subject line was, closure. It was from Sana. I almost deleted it without reading. But something stopped me. I opened it. It was long. She had written without bitterness, without begging. Just a long, winding thread of confessions. She wrote about pressure, about how, when her father died, she had become the emotional crutch for her mother, and I had become the mule, the laborer, the invisible savior. She admitted she had let them shape her idea of what a husband should be: wealthy, loud, powerful, and when I didn't fit their fantasy, she began to shrink me in her mind, diminish me. She confessed she had loved me once, deeply, and that my silence at the wedding had been louder than any screaming she'd ever heard. I don't expect you to forgive me, she wrote, but I needed you to know that I finally understand what I did to you, and it haunts me. I didn't reply. That night, I dreamed of my wedding day, but this time, the faces were blurred. The hall was empty. Only Sana stood at the center, holding a bouquet that kept wilting in her hands. I watched her from a distance, not with anger, but with the kind of sorrow you feel for someone drowning in a pool they built themselves. The next week, I received a letter by post. No return address. Inside was a photograph, the wedding photograph, Mahak's wedding, but someone had drawn a small circle in red ink around my ring lying on the table. No note, no explanation. I stared at the image for minutes. Then I tore it and threw it away. The past was no longer mine to carry. Things began to change in small ways. I enrolled in a weekend cooking class, bought a second-hand guitar, painted the walls of my apartment in muted greens and browns. Nature, colors, peaceful. I began sleeping better, deeper, no longer bracing for the voice of someone demanding something at midnight. Then came the real test. It was a Tuesday afternoon when I saw her again, not at my door. It the same park we used to visit every Eid with her family. I hadn't been there in years, but I'd needed air. There she was, sitting alone on a bench, reading something on her phone. Her hair was tied in a simple braid. No makeup, no designer shawl. She saw me. Her eyes widened. She didn't wave. I walked past her slowly, and for a moment, we were just two strangers in a park. Then she stood. Rayyan, she said. I stopped. She took a cautious step forward. I didn't expect to see you. I didn't come to see you, I replied. She looked down. I've been in therapy. I raised an eyebrow. I'm trying to unlearn things, she continued. I know it's too late. Sometimes I walk here hoping maybe you'll pass by. I said nothing. I used to think love meant possession, she said. You taught me it meant protection. I used that protection until I broke it. There was silence between us. Then she said, you never yelled. You never accused me. I didn't have to, I said. The mirror was always there. You just refused to look. She blinked quickly, eyes glistening. I took a deep breath. I'm glad you're healing, I said. Then I walked away. This time she didn't call after me. I didn't need her to. The next day, I received a letter from the bank, a final confirmation. My name had been officially removed from every liability related to her family. Loans, registrations, guarantees, all gone. I was, for the first time in years, unbound. That night, I lit a candle and sat on the floor with a blank notebook. On the first page, I wrote one word, freedom. Then I closed the book, not to end a chapter, but to start a new one, not out of revenge, not out of bitterness, just a life reclaimed. And sometimes, The loudest story you can tell is the one you never explain, because some silences are not empty, some silences are earned. Moral and life lesson: never let love become servitude. When respect fades and sacrifice is taken for granted, silence becomes stronger than words. This story teaches that quiet dignity can dismantle the loudest humiliation, and walking away from toxic relationships is not weakness, it is self-respect. You are not obligated to stay where you are not valued. Love should uplift, not erase.